Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Rosie Rose Reads. I am Rosie and I am reading. And this month I decided that I wanted to film a July TBR video. I have never done a TBR video before, and that is solely because I am a huge mood reader. I just read whatever I feel like. I usually get it into my head that, oh, I might read this book, I might read this book, and then I end up just reading random books that I had not heard of before or not thought of recently. With that being said, I decided that for July, I have a couple books in mind that I would really like to get through. And so I figured I would sit down and chat with you about them. I have been watching a lot of my favorite YouTubers. We were on vacation, so I fell behind with their updates, so I have been catching up. And some of them did July TBR videos, and I thought, I'm gonna do one too. So I decided that for my TBR, rather than having a set of books or I'm only reading these books, I'm only reading these books in this order, I have some books that have kind of been on my mind, and I am going to try and challenge myself to mood read within those books. So I'm sure that I will pick up different books based off of my mood, but I'm trying to select some books that have been on my TBR that fall into these different moods. So when I'm in the mood for a certain type of book, I know what I'm gonna grab next. So it's kind of a TBR in that sense, but not super strict, since I know that won't work for me. So first up, I mentioned in my June recap that I love cowboy romances. And cowboy romances, but also small town romances, they kind of go along similarly in my head. So I had read some in June. I really love them. June was not the first month that I read them, but I was reminded that I love them. And I recently picked up When in Rome and Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. They are not cowboy romances in there's no farm, there's no cowboys, horses, Western vibes, but as far as I know, but they are small town romances. This takes place when in Rome, being Rome, Kentucky. And then I believe this is the follow-up that takes place in the same universe. So with that in mind, I thought I might dive into these if I need more of that small town romance kick. Also, these are pretty short, so I'm hoping I can fly through them. I've had some friends and mutuals that I follow on Bookstagram and Goodreads recently read these, since Practice Makes Perfect is a new release, and they absolutely love them and highly recommend them. So these are what I will be looking for if I need some more small town romance. And if I am in the mood for just a good old-fashioned contemporary romance, I am going to reach for Ali Hazelwood's Love Theoretically. This is also a recent release, and it is her third adult full-length novel. I really enjoyed the first two, and I picked this up at the same bookstore that I got the two Sarah Adams books. It takes place in the STEM academic world, as do the first two Ali Hazelwood books. I do think it is a fake dating romance trope, if I am correct, and that is always fun to me. So if I'm in the mood for just a contemporary romance book, this is what I am going to pick up. So in June, I read A Raver Enchanted by Rebecca Ross, and then this month I finished A Fire Endless, which is the second book in the Isle of Cadence duology, and I really, really loved it. So it kind of got me in the mood for some bigger fantasy vibes. So on that note, if I feel like a kind of lower stakes fantasy vibes, I'm either going to reach for Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, which I think is an enemies to lovers academic type setup, but I've heard kind of has the lower stakes fantasy feels that just feels really kind of comforting fantasy. Or I will reach for the second book in the Mead Mishaps series by Kimberly Lemmings, which is a kind of fantasy rom-com adjacent And I really enjoyed the first Mead Mishaps book that I read in June, so I think this would be a fun follow-up if I want something that takes place in the fantasy world but feels a little bit lower stakes. However, with that said, I have kind of been feeling like I am in the mood for a more epic fantasy. I am currently rereading the Throne of Glass series with my husband, and that has kind of got me feeling like I need more fantasy in my life. So one option is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, and I recently read The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi, and I really enjoyed that. So I know this is the first book of the Davabad trilogy, and I've heard really great things about it as a epic fantasy that takes place in a like non-Western European type of world. So that sounds really intriguing, and this has been in my mind for a while now, so it is one option. The other option is Scythe by Neal Shusterman. And this is a YA kind of dystopian, utopian fantasy in which it is a utopian world with no hunger, no disease, no war, no misery. Humanity has conquered all of those things, including death. However, for population control, there are scythes who are the only ones who can kill people in a kind of systematic way. My husband took this trilogy to the beach and he absolutely flew through these. He loved these. He's very eager to talk about them and he thinks that I will enjoy them as well. So they are on my July TBR for a kind of YA sci-fi fantasy type feeling book. The other option is Carissa Broadbent's Serpents and the Wings of the Night, or The Serpent and the Wings of the Night. And I have been hearing so much about Carissa Broadbent's series. It is a collection of duologies, and I believe there are some novellas sprinkled between. So many YouTubers that I watch who are into fantasy romance absolutely love these books and like highly recommend them. And a friend whose recommendations I really trust is currently reading and enjoying them. So it's been on my mind that I might want to dive into them if I want a fantasy romance and like a kind of more epic fantasy romance, since it takes place over the course of multiple books. So that is what I am thinking in terms of fantasy. The other option for fantasy, and I will say this with the preface of, I haven't read anything recently that I felt like has changed my life as a reader. Nothing that feels like groundbreaking or monumental. I've been reading a lot of books that I enjoy, and some books that have really beautiful plot, really beautiful characters, really beautiful language that are really enjoyable reads. But once I'm done with them, I kind of feel done with them and move on. And I kind of really want a book that just is like gonna destroy me and gonna be the book. So one option in this kind of mood that I'm thinking about is Babel by R.F. Kuang. Now, this book has been on my TBR for forever. I really want to read it. However, I am intimidated by it, which is why I haven't read it yet. It feels like a book that I need to sit down with and read and annotate and digest and really live in and live with for a while, because it is a thick one. And a lot of the time when I get home from work and I want to read, I want something fun. I want something I can sit in the bath with or read in the dark before I go to bed and unwind with. So Babel doesn't necessarily fall into those parameters. However, if I feel like I really need something that is just going to like be that thing, this might be it. And it is a fantasy world, so it might be a good option for fantasy books also. Now, the last book that is on my July TBR is another book that falls into this kind of life-altering book category, or at least what I hope might be like life-altering as a reader book category. And that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. My husband also recently read this because he loves video games, and I know that this follows two friends throughout their life and they develop a video game together. So I recommended this to him. He read it recently on a trip back to Colorado and was really, really engrossed with it for the first time in a long time of reading books, and said that he thought I would love it and that it will absolutely wreck me. So this is another one that just has tons and tons and tons of praise, and I have had on my TBR since it came out, but I've been a little bit intimidated because I don't know if I'm emotionally ready for it, but I feel like I'm approaching the place that I might be. So I have a strong feeling I'm gonna pick this one up in July, and hopefully I love it as much as everybody else does. So that is my kind of last option for books. So by my count, I think that is 10 books that are kind of on my TBR, on my brain, in the realm of possibilities for reads for July. I'm sure other books will come up, and possibly like books will pop up on my Libby, or audiobooks on my Scribd account will look really intriguing to me. But as far as other reads, like, this is kind of what I am thinking about. If you have read any of these and really recommend them, or really don't for other reasons, please drop them in my comments and let me know. I love chatting about books with you all, whether that is in my comments or over on my Bookstagram at Rosie Rose Reads. I love to hear what you guys think about these books, and I am interested to see if when my July wrap-up comes, I will have actually read these books, or my mood reading tendencies will have taken me in a totally different path, which is a possibility. This might be a throwaway video, and these might be books I don't get to for a long while. But I'm really excited about a lot of them, so I hope to get to them this month. And until then, until we meet again, I hope you have a 5-star read. Thanks. Bye.